Going live. Hello, everybody. We are now live on Facebook. Let me introduce Gulzhanat, our today's speaker. Dr. Gulzhanat Gafu holds a PhD in Comparative and International Higher Education from UCL Institute of Education, based in London. Her research interests include global HE internationalization, research ethics, graduate skills. Currently, she's a postdoctoral fellow at the Nazarbayev University Graduate School of Education, working on CARE, Central Asian Research Ethics, project led by Professor Elaine Sharplin. So the paper she'll be presenting reports the finding of a desk research inquiry into the pattern of research ethics frameworks in higher education institutions in Uzbekistan. The paper researched the pattern of adoption, adaption, and abstention in the policy process, affecting relatively new political regimes. So that sounds very fascinating, Gulzhanat. I'm looking forward to hear about it more from you. Thank you again. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mulder. Thank you for having me today and for any interest in this topic. So as Mulder just presented, I'm a graduate of UCL, done my PhD in higher education, internationalization and research development in Kazakhstan. So shall I share the screen?
Yes, please.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. This is an article that we've have written collaboratively with professors in Nazarbayev University, one of which is Neil Collins. He's from the Graduate School of Public Policy. This generally is an article that was written as part of the project, which is called CARE, entitled Co-Creating Culturally Relevant Social Science Research Ethics in Central Asia. This is a large project which involves 3 countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan, and aims to explore understanding of current social science research ethics practices in Central Asia, and also to develop, investigate fit for international research practices. Just a second.
Yeah, it happens in online presentations.
Sorry. And collaboratively create understanding of culturally and contextually relevant research ethics and principles and practices. So this is quite an important project for our region, because of its state, generally at the stage of the development as a nation building, and the importance of not copying and pasting from, for example, Western practices, but try to co-create practices that are relevant to our region. This project involves 3 countries, as I said, 5 higher education institutions and 15 researchers. In stage 1, we've done the desktop review of policies and literature in 3 countries in relation to research ethics. And this article was written as a result of this, the stage 1. In the second stage, we've conducted a quantitative survey of social science researchers, again, in 3 countries. And now we are in stage 3, when we are planning and now getting prepared to do a qualitative in-depth interviews and roundtables again in 3 countries. So the problem of social science research in Central Asia is that there is a quite an intensive need for in Central Asia to be part of the global knowledge production system, and there is a pressure in all 3 countries to produce globally impactful knowledge. But there is a kind of a tension between local and global influences in Central Asia. And there is a kind of a possibility to clone research ethics practice from the global north. So in this article, we look at the concepts of adoption, adaption, and abstention with a focus on policy in higher education. We we discussed that the countries, especially newly independent countries, they either adopt some policies from elsewhere because it avoids some costs and delays, or because it's seen as successful somewhere else, or domestic policymakers see some similarities with those policies. Or the next kind of a type of policy making is when they adapt some policies from somewhere else. Again, this relates to the policy diffusion in the literature as policy diffusion or policy convergence. Or in some cases, there is an abstention or opt out from that policy because it seems unsuccessful. Because there are some cases of being unsuccessful. There might be some opposition, local opposition, and there might be some negative cost benefit calculation. So in relation to, in this article, we've looked at the policies in research ethics in social sciences in Uzbekistan. And because it's kind of a newly independent, relatively newly independent country, which has a two kind of a the development pre 2016 and post 2016, when they have these leaders change. And in a policy, we look at continuity or change of public policy. So whether the new leader either continues the previous government's policy or change. We see that in post 2016 policy, there is a kind of greater focus on internationalization. There is much more kind of openness in adopting international norms and standards in public policy. So, however, in relation to research ethics policy in Uzbekistan, we assumed that policymakers are not unaware of the existence of research ethics. However, because there are some examples of the research ethics in the developed countries or maybe in neighboring countries, they may be prompted by international organizations that are present in the country, or usually, again, for example, as in the example with Kazakhstan, they might be highlighted by colleagues who have been educated abroad. But as the methodology, as the results show, there is some gaps in the policy, which generally ignores maybe, or maybe not considered in relation to research ethics. This article was written on the basis of a desktop review and analysis of existing literature on higher education, research development, and research ethics in Uzbekistan. We've reviewed central government and different other legal websites and analyzed laws and legal documents in English and Russian. We've also reviewed websites of 81 Uzbek higher education institutions to see what institutional policies are there on research ethics. So, as I said, post 2016, there's been kind of some active changes in legal kind of framework in Uzbekistan. And for example, they've reconsidered or maybe updated their law on science and scientific activity in 2019. So in relation to policy in research ethics, we found only 2 legal documents which kind of considers research ethics, which is this law on science and scientific activity, and the other one was law on personal data, also from 2019. So the 2 articles that, for example, Article 3 says no causing harm to human life and health and environment in relation to research ethics, and Article 14, which emphasizes that each human subject has a right to refuse to participate in research. But there isn't any more of discussion of research ethics generally in relation to human subjects. Another one was a law on personal data, which stipulates that the Article 16 stipulates that researchers should anonymize personal data for historical, statistical, and sociological scientific research. And similarly, there is a note that no written notification of research subject is required if it's if there is a need to transfer personal data for research purposes. The key findings on the institutional policies shows that there is a minimal kind of consideration or discussion of ethical regulations, mechanisms, policies, and practices in humanities and social sciences. Any mention of research ethics is related either to ethics of publishing in academic journals, or it is mentioned in relation to etiquette or professional relationship between faculty members and students, or as a pedagogical ethics or tact. So this is kind of is really, I think, a something remained from Soviet past or Soviet understanding of ethics in general. Some few mentions of human research ethics can be found on the websites of foreign branch campuses. You may know that Uzbekistan has since 2000 have established something like more than 15 branch campuses, which is now, I think, increased up to 25, I think, where most of them are Russian institutions. Discussing all the policy adoption and adaption and abstention, we've kind of concluded that currently there is no clearly articulated social science research ethics, both nationally and institutionally, though kind of Uzbekistan is in kind of actively promoting international research, promoting international research standards, and similar to Kazakhstan, wants to become globally visible in terms of knowledge production. but that is mainly limited to publishing in international top non-zero impact factor journals. We think that this might be because of the continued lack of focus on social sciences, because you may know again that from the Soviet past there was always a focus more on hard sciences rather than social sciences. There is a increased understanding of research in a positivist paradigm, with less focus on qualitative research. There is quite a heterogeneity of higher education institutions. So there are lots of categories of higher education institutions, from different like institutes, academies, universities, branch campuses, etc. However, the literature indicates that the local universities kind of gradually shifting towards international standards, like academic freedom, merit-based education. And in this sense, international branch campuses are seen as the ones to reward or promote international research culture. While there is a kind of significant focus on adoption and adaptation of different policies from abroad, from elsewhere, from say neighboring countries, from developed ones, there is a notable absence of research ethics policies in social sciences, with a research in with human subjects, which we then concluded as a abstention of policies at this stage in Uzbekistan. So in the future stages of our project, we are going to explore this a little bit more with in-depth interviews with the people in Uzbekistan, with social sciences, with policymakers, and will hopefully further contribute empirically to this topic. Thank you very much. Did I do it very quickly?
Thank you so much, Gulzhanat. That's a very interesting topic. So that's interesting that you chose Uzbekistan, because there are 5 countries in Central Asia, including our Kazakhstan, which I'm sure has also issues with them in terms of their ethics. So may I ask, why did you choose this particular country, Uzbekistan, for your research?
Well, generally the project looks at 3 countries: Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. We've divided into small country teams at the first instance, and because I generally been interested in Kazakhstan, but I really wanted to know what is going on in other countries, so I've decided to look at Uzbekistan. However, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be involved in other countries. So this is generally since this is a 3-year project, we are in year 2, and we are generally exploring all 3 countries, and the state of things is generally similar in all 3 countries, with more or less kind of development in Kazakhstan, and less in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. So we really hope that by the end of the project, we will have some contribution and offerings in terms of the co-culturally relevant research ethics for the Central Asia.
I see, thank you. So another question I have is that, so you made a conclusion that there is absence of research ethics in Uzbekistan. So what is the next step? How this issue can be addressed?
We, as part of the project, we are planning to issue various policy briefs and aim these to policymakers and kind of reach them to say the importance of research ethics if the countries want to kind of want to create or produce globally, regionally impactful knowledge, they need to consider possibly creating or establishing research ethics guidelines. But we don't say that this needs to be kind of copied and pasted from Western principles. We want the countries and the region to look at how they can create their own culturally relevant research ethics guidelines. But at the same time, we want them to be compatible with global norms because we can't go away from the how do you say, this global interconnectedness, and we know that there is a pressure to publish in international journals where the research ethics is generally required, Western principled research ethics. So that's why we can't ignore Western principles, but we, in the first instance, we want to emphasize the need and importance for research ethics as a need to have a important research culture, comprehensive research culture in the region, which and then the knowledge production in itself requires research integrity and research ethics, especially if it is related to research with human subjects, right? So we hope to reach to policymakers, we hope to reach to social scientists in the region, we hope to reach institutional leaders, and through our publications, through our seminars, through sharing our knowledge. And I think in the first instance, considering the style of governance in all three countries, until I think we are aware that until it comes from the top to say that this is in the policy, it might not work. So that's why in the first instance, we want to reach out to policymakers and alert them to the significance of research ethics, both at national and institutional level. So yeah.
Thank you. So when you say culturally adopted research ethics, what do you mean by that? How would the research ethics, for example, in Uzbekistan, imposed by the social policymakers, how would that differ from the research ethics of the global north?
Well, you know, in the global north, there is these four principles, right, of research ethics: in justice, trust, beneficence, and honesty. But there is a difference in cultural decision making. For example, when, for example, in the practice of informed consent, people in Central Asia is kind of have this collective mind, while in, for example, in the Western is individualized approach, right? So when considering or creating culturally relevant research ethics, we need to take into consideration the cultural values and norms. It might be for example, we might go to philosophical roots or of the philosophical understanding of our nation, right? Or as Kazakhs or Uzbeks, and that's why we are going to have these interviews and roundtables involving social science researchers from each country and see how they see the cultural relevant research ethics, whether there is a need for national code of research ethics for social science in each country, and looking at cultural codes, cultural norms and values. And that's why it is kind of it might take time, and it's an important step, I think, for us as a region to kind of decolonize the knowledge production and perhaps decolonize our minds in terms of the knowledge production system that we might have, and not look at Western ones as something which is the right one, right? So yeah, very important thing is going. I mean, I hope we'll come up with something which will be valuable.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope your work will make a huge contribution into ethics field in our country, in Central Asia. So how aware are you of culturally relevant research ethics in other Asian countries? Have you looked into that? Is this already the case?
Yeah, there are some discussions in relation to indigenous people now, for example, in Taiwan, in New Zealand, in Africa, but I don't think there is some established national codes yet. I know that there is one in Scandinavian countries. They have their national code for social science research ethics with human subjects, but mostly it is something established, Western established principles that are being employed. But at least there are some debates and discussions in other parts of the world, and there is very little in Central Asia, because I think we are too early stating about co-culturally research ethics, while there isn't research ethics at all. Normatively, like there are no regulations at all in terms of social science and involving human subjects. So perhaps we are maybe we have started this project, that there is this kind of a question of perhaps we started this too early, because I don't think yet even researchers and policymakers do understand that there needs to be research ethics first of all, and then those research ethics should not be just adopted from somewhere, but be created or maybe co-created, again taking into account global norms as well, regionally.
I see. What about Kazakhstan? How is developed the research ethics in Kazakhstan is? Because I assume that there is already functioning research ethics in our country.
In all three countries, there is some research ethics in relation to biomedical research. And all those principles are there, but that's in relation to biomedical research only. But since we are looking at social science only, in Kazakhstan, there is very kind of a tiny glimpse of research ethics that is launched by KERA, Kazakhstan Education Research Association, but it's not on the policy level. It is kind of and if it's not even adopted by institutions, by other institutions. So it's kind of a recommendation maybe by a new team that there should be research ethics in social sciences. What we've found out is that in some internationalized institutions, higher education institutions, and I assume this might be because of returning Bolshak scholars or maybe some other scholars who have been educated in Western countries, there are some glimpses of ethical regulations, but in 90, maybe 95% of institutions, there isn't even any ethics committee. And any research, social science research is not regulated ethically. And I think, again, we come back to the practices of doing research, to the methodologies, which is generally based on desktop review, right? Very often they don't do research involving people, like doing interviews and questionnaires and etc. That can be done maybe in some internationalized universities like IMAP, SDU, and that's why, I mean, in Kazakhstan is almost similar. Again, no mention on policy level. Something happening on institutional level, very few, very small. Similar in Kyrgyzstan, institutions like American Central University, American something, another university as well. So these are some like internationalized universities do have regulations in place, but these are not regulated policy-wise on a national level.
I see. So you mentioned at the end of your presentation that you are planning to conduct the primary research, so you will be collecting data and drawing the results. So in Uzbekistan, what participants you'll be recruiting? Who are you going to interview or include
in all three countries? We are again will be purposefully sampling social science researchers who do research involving human subjects, because when piloting the interviews, we've found out that if someone has not done any research with human subjects, they don't even know what ethical principles are. And when you ask them about generally about how they do research, they don't have knowledge about that. So we think we will have like three scenario interviews, when first of all it will be someone who has been doing research only locally. There was someone who will have some international knowledge, and there will be someone who has done only international research. So looking at these three scenarios, we want to kind of see how fit international practices are, or what kind of local principles might be useful in co-creating research ethics in the region. So it will be people who work on research institutes and higher education institutions who do research in social sciences with human subjects.
Okay, so when you say Uzbekistan, which cities do you are planning to conduct the research?
We haven't yet kind of developed any agenda for that. We are only at the stage of applying for IREC and confirming our instrument. Since we have our collaborators in each country, we hope for their help and assistance. and for recruiting people, because it's going to be like 30 participants in each country, like Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, and 16 in Kazakhstan. Because the survey that we've done showed that there is so little social science scientists in 2 other countries. We had like more than 300 responses in Kazakhstan and something like 50 in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. So that was really small numbers. But when we compared the research output, similarly, in Kazakhstan, there is quite a significant publications in social sciences, while in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan is so tiny. So we thought maybe there is kind of a, how do you call it? Justification why we had very small numbers of responses from those 2 countries. So yeah, we will see how it goes. But we're really looking forward to have some deep and rich data.
Yeah. Thank you. As you have mentioned that in Kazakhstan, there is a more research potential, or maybe more ethics followed in Kazakhstan. Do you think that the reason is in economical development, or maybe in political state in that countries? Because as far as I know, in Uzbekistan there is less freedom of speech, as we could put it in that way, than in Kazakhstan, and it might be restricting researchers of willing to participate in research, or maybe there is more restrictions.
I think Kazakhstan has started internationalizing its research a bit earlier, and focus on like international publications, etc. Even the Bolshak program, I think, has made quite huge contribution to this. Yeah. With Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, I think it has been really recently, like since 2015 or something. So, but the policies are really similar. What we have and what they are promoting at this stage. And I think, I mean, in Kazakhstan also the funding maybe for research is bigger than, you know, in 2 other countries. And maybe the share of researchers is also larger than in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. So there are lots of, we're still kind of analyzing our survey data, and there are lots of insights are coming. So hopefully we'll have publications on that as well, on the statistically and also qualitatively as well.
Let's see. Thank you so much, Gulzhanat, for your valuable contribution into research on Central Asia. So I'm happy that you're doing this project lasting 3 years, especially on the research ethics, because as we always discuss in our PhD groups, that there is lack of ethics abided in Kazakhstan. A lot of people, researchers breach the research ethics, the research law. So it's quite good that your work will help more people to understand how ethics is important, because I don't think it's talked much about more in our universities. So thank you so much. So
thank you for having me, and I hope this will be somehow valuable and will contribute to the research ethics establishment in Kazakhstan, and will generally valuable and contribute to how we to our knowledge production system generally in Kazakhstan and generally in Central Asia. Yeah, thank you again for organizing this seminar. It's a pity that we don't have much people interest, but yeah, hopefully this will be maybe watched on Facebook and somewhere else.
Yes, I will upload it on YouTube, so whoever missed the webinar could access it from our PhD Association YouTube and the Facebook channels.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.